Hello, John Knox. This is Sue King Irwin, and I'm here with my cameraman, my husband, Hank. Say hi, Hank.
Hi, Hank.
Now, you probably know us because Hank sings in the choir and he plays his harmonicas, and you know me because sometimes I'm an usher. But one thing you might not know about us is that we're both also science teachers. So you can see that I'm here in my lab coat. And it's because I teach chemistry, and chemistry is a branch of science where we learn about what things are made of, like atoms and molecules, and we also learn about how things react with each other, like chemical reactions. Now, Hank teaches physics. He also teaches math. And physics, do you want to tell them what physics is about?
Physics is about trying to make models so you can understand why things happen the way they do.
And he teaches things like electricity and how planets orbit around the sun and things like that.
Magnetism.
And magnetism. So, yeah. So anyway, I've got a science lesson for you guys. I know you guys are home from school now because we're all sheltering at home because of the coronavirus. And so I hope you're learning things while you're at home. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about science, and I'm also going to read you a little bit from the Bible because science is all about God's creation, and it's in the Bible too. So I'm going to explain how that works. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something that I like to show my students on the first day of class, because sometimes my students come into chemistry class, see they're high school students or college students, they're sometimes kind of nervous about what chemistry is going to be about. So I like to show them that they're going to have some fun in chemistry. So before I do this, I'm going to put on my goggles because when you're dealing with chemicals, sometimes they might get in your eyes and that could hurt your eyes, or they might get on your clothes. That's why we wear lab coats. Sometimes we wear gloves, but not very often. And the things I'm going to show you, I'm not too worried. I'm just going to wash my hands afterwards. But anyway, so you can see I've got these 3 jars here, and they all 3 have this clear liquid. It looks just like water, right? So I don't have all the equipment that I would have if I was in my lab, so I'm going to improvise. It's going to be a little bit messier than if I were in school, but you'll follow along. So anyway, Hank, do you remember Jesus' first miracle?
Turning water into wine?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to do something that kind of looks like that. So I've got my wine glass here, and I have my special drops. I'm going to add to my wine glass a couple of drops. And so if I had my beakers with a pour spout, it would be less messy, but I'm just going to pour a little bit of this water into my wine glass. Cool, huh? Did you see that? Oops. I'm used to holding it up so that my students can see, but did you see? I turned water into wine, right?
We kind of missed it because you had it up here.
Oh, okay. So the next one, I'm going to do it lower because it's out of the camera range. Hank is telling me. All right, so anyway, I better not have wine. You guys are mostly kids, and you shouldn't be drinking wine. So I'm going to change the wine back into water. Now, this time I'm going to use a dropper. Now, you see this is colorless. It looks like water also. I'll put a little bit in. Not much is happening. But if I put in enough drops, usually I just pour it in, but I'm just afraid I'm going to make a big mess. Look at that. The pink is going away. Is that cool? Let me swirl it around. Where'd the pink go? It's all gone. Well, that's kind of boring. Back to water again. I got an idea. Let's make some milk. See if we can make some milk. So I'm going to take this jar, take a different dropper. And put some of this in. And look at that. Turn water into milk. Let's swirl it around, and it's a little bit weak, but anyway, you better not drink it. It's really not milk. Did you really think that these things were just water that could do that? Did you think that, Hank?
I don't know. I'm a physicist, not a chemist.
You didn't know what happened. All right. Well, I'll just tell you, I really didn't do a miracle like Jesus did. I didn't do a miracle and I didn't do magic. But the trick is there's other things in here that are not water. There's a lot of water in these jars, but there are other things that are dissolved in here that are not water, that can turn things colors and that can turn things milky. And so they were invisible. The things that are in here are invisible. Just like when you dissolve salt in water, you can't see the salt. The salt goes away, but you could taste it. So that's just one of the fun things that we do. But now, if you asked my students, now you could probably ask P.J. Peterson, Avi and Panlu's dad, because he was one of my students, or maybe Zach Siegel, Vicki and Steve's son, because he was one of my students, or any of my other students, what really happened in here, and they might be able to tell you. But since they're not here, I'm going to tell you what happened. So in the first one, this is water, but it also has sodium hydroxide. And the second one has a lot of water, but it also has some sulfuric acid. And then the third one looks like water, but it also has some barium chloride. I don't know if you can read the labels on these jars. So what, Hank? What?
Turn the bottle a little.
Turn the bottle a little.
Yeah,
okay,
there you go.
there. Okay. So anyway, these have some chemicals that were in them. And so what I did is, the first thing I did was an acid-base reaction. And these special drops, this is called phenolphthalein, and it's an acid-base indicator. So I turned it basic, and then I turned it back to acid, and then I did a precipitation reaction, and that's what turned this into milk, the water into milk. So anyway, that's one of the things that my students would learn about. Now, what I want to show you in the Bible is I want to tell you a little bit about why we study science. So we study science because God created this amazing world, and he gave it to us to learn to use for his purposes. So let me read you from Genesis chapter 1, verses 27 and 28. It says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and he said to them, 'Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over every living creature that moves on the ground.'" So God gave man the authority to subdue the earth and to rule over it. How could we do that if we didn't study his creation? So that's what we do when we study science. We're studying the creation that God gave us so that we could do his purposes here on earth. The other verse that I like with this demonstration is from Colossians, and it's Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 and 16. And it says, it's talking about Jesus, and it says, "He's the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by him and for him." And so it says that he created things, all the creation that we can see, but also things that are invisible. So just like we have the chemicals that are dissolved in the water here that's invisible, God created those things too. He created atoms and molecules, even the coronavirus, something that we can't see, but we can see the evidence. So we can see the evidence of things that are invisible by things that are visible, like people get sick by germs. Coronavirus is a germ. So that's an example. But all these things were created by God. That's the bottom line. And he wants us to study them. And so as you learn your science lessons in school, remember that you're studying God's creation. And it's what he wants us all to do. So learn your lessons well. Now, Nancy said that we should also say some corny jokes. So we thought of some science jokes for you. Okay, you tell yours first.
You want me to tell mine first?
Yeah.
A neutron who walks into the store and he buys a bottle of Coke. And the neutron asks the cashier at the counter, how much?
For you, no charge. And here's my joke. An atom walked into a bar and he says to his friend, I lost my electron.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. Now, if you kids did not get those jokes, it's because you might not know about atoms and the subatomic particles, but they're made up of neutrons with no charge, and electrons, which are negative, and protons, which are positive. And if you lose your electrons, then you're positive. So those were what our jokes are all about. And anyway, it's time for us to sign off, I think. And so you guys have a good week. Everybody stay healthy, wash your hands, don't go out to gather with your friends, only go on nice healthy walks. All right, see you later. Bye-bye.